Hey guys, welcome to another video. I have been messing around with fixing my microphone and it has been quite a challenge, but I will solve it eventually. Anyways, the topic I want to talk about today is emotional triggers and how they are signposts for personal growth. So, what I mean by that is that we often find ourselves in situations, well, not necessarily often, but at least sometimes, we find ourselves in situations where we feel emotionally triggered. Someone says something and we feel an intense emotional reaction inside our bodies. We have all sorts of thoughts about this person. Who do they think they are? What do they think they can do to me? All these thoughts and these intense emotions, they rise and they come up in our system, right? Or you read something in the news, or you whatever. We all know how it feels to get emotionally triggered. So when this actually happens, this is a opportunity for you to learn something profound about yourself. And once you adapt this attitude and once you understand the value of situations like this, I am sure you will be able to grow significantly from that as a person. So, when you get emotionally triggered, this is actually an opportunity for you to look inward and to really listen. What is the reason that I have this disproportionate reaction to this situation? Because you know when you have a disproportionate reaction to something. You know that, hey, this is really out of proportion for what it actually is. At least if you practice mindfulness and if you expand your awareness, you will find yourself in situations where you understand that, okay, this was a very disproportionate reaction, and I know that I shouldn't have felt these intense emotions, but I did, right? I mean, not necessarily shouldn't have, because I'm not a big fan of judging whether you should or should not feel a certain way. You want to accept and validate the way you feel, right? But what I'm saying is that this intense emotional reaction can act as a signpost to a part of yourself that you have been suppressing or neglecting, or a part of yourself that you're not really aware of. It's buried in your subconscious. And when a certain situation triggers that part of yourself, it erupts. And this is the disproportionate emotional reaction you're experiencing when it erupts. This trigger is actually opening the gateway to this suppressed part of yourself, this part that you are actually either unaware of, or you decide to suppress it and to hide it a little bit. It's kind of like the shadow part of your personality, right? This is where shadow work comes from, actually. If you want to do shadow work effectively, then one of the most useful tools are emotional triggers, because they are easy to recognize. It's easy to recognize that, oh, I have a disproportionate behavior or reaction to a certain situation. They're easy to recognize, and because of that you can then there is an increased level of awareness about these situations. Because if you're just in a day-to-day mindset, if you're in a day-to-day peaceful state, then it's harder to dig up the shadow part of your personality. It's a lot easier to access them whenever there's something erupting, because then you can capture it faster, right? Otherwise you will have to really sit down and go deep and think and really put in a lot of time and effort to figuring out and discovering parts that you might suppress. But when it's erupting, it's almost impossible to close your eyes to it and not pay attention, right? So you want to cultivate a level of awareness where you understand that, okay, this was a disproportionate reaction to the situation. This was definitely a trigger that caused me to erupt at some point. Somehow it caused me to erupt. It caused me to lash out. It caused me to feel incredibly sad or disappointed or angry or whatever, or shameful. And these situations, they can act as a very powerful tool for further self-development. So the description of calling them a signpost, the way of calling them a signpost basically means that, okay, you're walking down the path of self-development and then there's a signpost, hey, go here, which basically is a metaphor for describing that these emotional triggers, they capture your attention. Let's go here, let's walk this path, let's look what's here, right? And of course you want to be careful with it sometimes because they can lead to very, very dark and scary paths. So I am not saying that you should do this just on a whim. It can lead to very, very dark parts of your personality that you are repressing for, that you have been repressing for a long time. So be careful with noticing the signpost and then walking down that path. So I want to warn you for that. But on the other hand, it's a very valuable thing to pay attention to the signposts and be curious about where these signposts could possibly lead you. Okay? So whenever you feel an emotionally disproportionate reaction, look inward, create some space, wait before you act. Take a moment to calm down your system because it's in an aroused state. There's hormones rushing through your blood and they cause you to be less thoughtful about your actions, right? So understand that, okay, this is a disproportionate reaction right now. Let me remember what Wolf told me and give it a try to just wait a little bit, create some space. And after you've done that, after your system has had the time to come back down and settle in a more stable at a more stable set point again, then you can start thinking, okay, what exactly caused this disproportionate reaction? What exactly was the trigger? What specifically triggered me? And really think about it, really look into it. What specifically triggered it? Was it the specific behavior? Was it the attitude? Was it a word they said? Was it whatever, look very closely. And what you will find is that there is a lot of very valuable information hidden in this eruption of energy. It came out, it was suppressed, it erupts, and once it opens, you can look inside if you take the time and if you're aware that this is happening in this very moment, right? So by looking and paying attention, is it the attitude? Is it a specific word? Is it the way they looked at me? Or is it the news of something terrible happening in the world? Whatever, right? Injustice. There can be so many reasons, right? And for example, I will just use an example. If somebody says a specific word or does a specific gesture, this can be linked to a childhood memory from a long time ago where somebody really hurt you saying this word or making this gesture, and your body recognizes this pattern, and so immediately it goes into a fight or flight state. It goes in an aroused state where you want to protect yourself because back when you were a child, it was a very, very painful and maybe even traumatic experience. So right now, your system automatically wants to protect itself. Another reason could be a certain attitude that someone seems to have towards you, and you feel like they are treating you with disrespect. You feel disrespected in the way they talk to you or the way they behave, and this triggers a sense of injustice inside you. And maybe this sense of injustice is actually one that you feel towards yourself. This could potentially be an explanation for your disproportionate emotional reaction in a certain situation. The thing I'm trying to communicate to you here is that once you develop the awareness that your emotionally triggered situations, the situations that trigger you emotionally, they contain a treasure of valuable information about parts of yourself that you might be neglecting. You might be scared to actually look at those parts of your personality. You might be afraid that, oh, maybe I'm not really that super kind, compassionate person that I think I am. Because trust me, we all have darker sides to our personality. We all have darker parts. And it's about incorporating these parts in, like integrating these parts into yourself, into your whole system, that makes you a wholesome person. Because I remember Jordan Peterson talking about this in one of his talks, that a bunny is not harmful. So it doesn't have the capacity to be dangerous. A bunny is just a bunny. A bunny is just an innocent bunny that it doesn't have the capacity to harm, to do real harm. So this is just an innocent bunny, right? But a lion that is able to cause so much destruction and suffering and harm, who is aware of this potential, of this capacity, of this capability to cause harm, and who chooses not to use these powers, that's a virtuous lion. So by you understanding that you have dark parts and that you have a capacity to cause harm and suffering, and choosing not to do that, this is virtue. This is a virtue to not use your powers for bad, to create more suffering, but to understand that yes, of course, you are capable of inflicting pain and suffering onto others, because you know how to inflict pain and suffering onto yourself. You understand that by realizing that you are me and I am you, you can pinch yourself and it hurts. You can pinch someone else and you know it will hurt, right? So this is the understanding that you have almost like a duty to integrate the darker parts of your personality, so that you can make a conscious decision to not abuse this power. Because if you don't integrate these parts of yourself, they will run your life on a subconscious level. They will run you subconsciously. You will have emotional triggered reactions all the time, until you integrate these parts of yourself, until you take the time to sit down and really look what happened, what is happening here, what are the reasons that I have such a disproportionate emotional reaction. Look at it, really pay attention, really go inside and be honest with yourself. This is what it means when this person says this specific word. It triggers an emotional reaction inside myself, because 10 years, 20 years, 30 years ago, somebody said this exact same word and hurt me with that tremendously, right? So this is very important to understand, that these triggers, these emotional triggers, they are very powerful tools for self-development, and they act as signposts to your journey towards self-actualization, basically. So I highly recommend you give it a try. You pay attention to when you act in a disproportionate way to a situation that maybe otherwise somebody else would not be triggered by at all. And I promise you, there will be a lot of hidden, valuable information there to be found. So, but with that, I want to thank you for watching. I want to thank you for being brave and looking inwards, and thus making the world a better place one step at a time. And as always, thanks for watching, guys. Talk to you soon.